So these are a series of replacements. You want to approach every problem going, what can I replace? And you want to turn everything into sines and cosines, because then the idea is that things can cancel out, okay? So I have cosine in the numerator. I'm just going to rewrite it as cosine over 1. It's never a bad idea to just put things over 1. You don't have to. That's like a personal preference. And then really big fraction bar. Here's the question. What can I replace cotangent with? Cosine over sine. Good. So that's the first step. And a lot of you are probably like doing some of that in your head. You have to write it down for me, because remember, I can only grade what's written on the paper. I can't grade what happened inside your brain. So you have to write it for me. When you divide by a fraction, that's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So I'm going to keep this cosine over 1 the same. I'm going to put my little dot for multiplication, and then I'm going to flip this over. So it'll now be sine over cosine. So what is going to cancel? The cosines cancel. You're left with sine over 1, which is just sine. So look at the second one. Do you see how it's 1 plus sine of theta squared? That means that you're going to have to write that twice. It means it is a twin. So I'm just writing that twice. And then we have minus sine squared. I just threw that at the end because it's there. So we're going to multiply this all together. Hey guys, 1 times 1. 1. Very good. The outsides give you 1 sine theta, and the insides give you 1 sine theta. So together, good. 1 plus 1 is 2. All right. And then sine times sine is sine squared. And then we have minus a sine squared. So I don't think so. I mean, those cancel out. And so 1 plus 2 sine theta is your answer. Did you get that one? Nice job. Yeah. Perfect. All right. When you see these ones with 90 minus, those are co-function. And this is like why I've been harping on about saying these correctly. You're just going to add or remove a co. So since this one's cosecant, if you remove the co, it is just secant. Perfect. And then sine, if you add a co, it is cosine. So that's what we've got so far. Now it's what can I replace? What can you replace secant with? 1 over cosine times cosine. Those cancel, and you just get 1. Beautiful. All right, number 4. What can you replace cotangent with? Good. I'm going to replace that with cosine over sine. Again, it's a series of replacements. You approach every problem going, what can I replace? Okay. Cosine, I'm going to leave alone, but I am going to just put it over 1. Again, a lot of times that's helpful to keep the 1 in there. But if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. That's like up to you. Really huge fraction bar. What can I replace cosecant with? 1 over sine. Good. Now that you've turned it all into sines and cosines, you want to look for what's going to cancel. Do you see these sines in here, how they're both on the bottom? Those are going to cancel. Now let's look at what's left. You have cosine times cosine. Those don't cancel. It would be cosine squared over 1, which would just be cosine squared. Now, simplify can be difficult to understand when you're finished, like how far do I have to go? Verify, you're going to know because the answer's on the paper, okay? We're going to start with this side of the equation and just work until we get this answer. So it's basically like you're being told this negative sine theta is the answer. Just figure it out. Now, when you see the ones with the negatives, those are even and odd. Even ones turn positive, odd ones turn negative. Which are the 2 even ones? Let's just verbally review that. Secant. Cosine and secant are the even ones. They would turn positive. All the rest are odd. So since tangent is odd, it's going to be negative tangent theta. and then times cosine theta. Don't write equals whatever. You're just going to keep working until you get that answer. All right. So it's a series of replacements. What can I replace tangent with?
Sine.
Yeah, sine over cosine, and that negative just kind of stays there. I'm going to put the cosine over 1. Again, if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. It's just personal preference. And so then what happens? Yeah, cosines cancel, and oh my gosh, I got negative sine of theta, which is the answer. So like the answer's on the paper, you just work until you get it. All right, looking here, you're going to start with this side. I know it looks like this is the more complicated side, but the reason we start here is because you have two separate things and you want to get a common denominator and put them together so you have one single thing instead of two separate things. So what can you replace cosecant with? All right, that's 1 over sine minus, and then you can replace cotangent, cosine over sine. And this one basically just falls into your lap because what's the common denominator? Yeah, it already has the common denominator. You're just going to put this all together and it's 1 minus cosine over sine, which, oh my goodness, is the answer. As a heads up for this last one, we're going to need the Pythagorean identities. Those are the ones I would actually suggest writing off to the side when you get your quiz. I wouldn't write all the rest. I think you kind of need to know those ones. But the Pythagorean ones I would write off to the side. The first one, sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. Honestly, I only memorized that one. You can get the others. If you divide all of this by cosine squared, just mentally imagine dividing all these by cosine squared. Sine over cosine would be tangent, it's going to be squared. Anything over itself would be 1. Secant squared. 1 over cosine is secant, it's just going to be squared. Then if you mentally go through and divide them all by sine squared, anything over itself is 1. Cosine over sine is cotangent, it's just squared. And then 1 over sine is cosecant, it's just squared. Those are the ones I would write off to the side. The reason I brought that up is because looking at this problem, we're going to need some of that. So let's see what we can replace. All right. So looking at the numerator, cosecant squared minus 1. Just watch me point to this. If you have cosecant squared minus 1, it's just cotangent squared. We need to keep the phones put away. So I'm going to replace that numerator with cotangent squared. So again, it was cosecant squared minus 1. It's going to give you cotangent squared. All right, now I want to do some more replacements, try to get everything into sines and cosines. What can I replace cotangent squared with? Good, it's cosine over sine, they're both just squared. So cosine squared over sine squared. Really big fraction bar. And cosecant is 1 over sine, it's just that it's good, it's squared. Sorry, talking and writing at the same time can be difficult. There we go. So what's going to cancel in that huge mess? The sine squareds cancel. You get cosine squared over 1, which just is cosine squared, which, oh my gosh, is the answer.